Hello there, welcome. Tonight, we're going to leave the noise of the modern world behind. We're setting off on a journey, deep into the heart of the Viking Age, where old stories meet the gentle quiet of a crackling fire. Feel the air around you grow still, as the sounds of your day begin to fade. In their place you might almost hear the whisper of a cold northern wind and the distant call of the sea. There's nothing else for you to do now. Just find a comfortable place to rest. Let your body feel heavy, and allow your muscles to soften. Take a slow, deep breath in, and as you breathe out, let the stresses of your day go. Picture them drifting away like smoke from a longhouse chimney. Let go of whatever is on your mind. Let the tide carry it all away. Tonight, we'll let the legendary sagas of Ragnar Lothbrok and his sons be your guide into a deep and peaceful sleep. Together we'll travel back through the mists of time, to a world of fearless warriors, towering longships and epic destinies forged in steel and fire. And as we begin, if you find a little peace in these stories from the past, think about subscribing to the channel. It helps us keep bringing these ancient worlds to you. For now though, just close your eyes. Your adventure is about to begin. Our story begins not with a clash of swords, but in the quiet, misty fjords of Scandinavia, sometime in the haze of the 9th century. This is a land of harsh beauty, where jagged mountains plunge into dark, cold waters, and vast, silent forests hold secrets older than memory. The people here are as rugged as the land itself, their lives shaped by the turning of the seasons and the will of their gods. And from this world, a name begins to be whispered, a name that will echo through the ages, blurring the line between man and myth: Ragnar Lothbrok. So who was this man? The sagas, the great stories written down centuries later, paint him as the son of a king, a descendant of the gods themselves. Historians, searching through scattered records, wonder if he was one man or a composite of many, his legend a tapestry woven from countless real deeds. For our journey tonight, we'll walk the path of the legend, because it's in these grand tales that the spirit of the Viking Age truly comes alive. Imagine a young Ragnar, not yet a king or a legend. He's filled with a restless spirit, a hunger for what lies beyond the horizon. He lives in a world where a man's worth is measured by the silver he can win, and the glory his name carries. And Ragnar feels his destiny isn't in the familiar comfort of home. It's calling to him from across the waves, from the shores of lands he's only heard about in stories told around the fire. The sagas tell us his first great deed wasn't one of raiding, but of rescue. A local jarl had a daughter named Thor, and he gave her a small, exotic snake as a gift, but this was a creature of myth. It grew and grew until it became a monstrous serpent that coiled around her chambers, terrorizing the land. The jarl promised Thor's hand to any man brave enough to slay the beast. Many tried, and many failed. But Ragnar, always cunning, prepared himself in a unique way. He made a set of trousers and a tunic from thick animal hides and coated them in pitch and sand. These hairy breeches, or Lothbrok in the Old Norse tongue, would become his namesake. Clad in this strange armor, he faced the serpent. Its fangs couldn't pierce the tarred hide, and with his spear, Ragnar was victorious. He freed the maiden and won his first taste of fame, marked not just as a warrior, but as a hero favored by destiny. With his name beginning to be known, Ragnar turned his eyes to the sea. The Viking Age was dawning, a time of incredible expansion, and the key to it all was the longship. Picture it now, a vessel of breathtaking elegance and brutal efficiency. It was long and narrow, with a shallow bottom that let it sail up rivers deep into foreign lands. Its symmetrical design meant it could reverse direction in an instant, a critical advantage in a raid. Propelled by a single large wool sail, and the strength of its crew at the oars, the longship was the engine of Viking power. Imagine a fleet of these ships, their dragon-headed prows, cutting through the grey waters of the North Sea. The shields of the warriors are mounted along the sides, a flash of colour against the dark wood. The air smells of salt and pine tar, and you can hear the creaking timber and the low murmur of men speaking their Norse tongue. They aren't just traveling, they're a force of nature about to be unleashed. Ragnar led these men south and west, to the coasts of Francia and Anglo-Saxon England. These were lands of rich monasteries filled with treasure, ruled by kings who were unprepared for this new kind of warfare. Viking raids were swift and shocking. They would appear from nowhere, strike with terrifying force and vanish back into the sea before a defense could be mustered. The raid on the monastery of Lindisfarne in 793, is often seen as the brutal start of the Viking Age in England, setting the stage for what was to come. But Ragnar was more than just a brute. He was a strategist who understood that fear was as powerful a weapon as steel. His early raids brought him wealth, and, more importantly, a reputation. He was becoming a man that other warriors wanted to follow, a leader whose name promised adventure and fortune. As he stood on the prow of his ship, the sea spray on his face, watching a foreign coastline grow on the horizon, Ragnar was no longer just a man from a misty fjord. He was becoming a legend. Allow your mind to drift now, on the gentle rocking of that longship, the rhythmic pull of the oars, the endless sea, the hum of anticipation. Let the motion soothe you, carrying you deeper into our story, and deeper into rest. As the years passed, Ragnar's fame grew. His name became a shadow that fell over the coasts of Europe, a warning whispered in towns from Ireland to Francia. He was no longer just a raider, he was a sea king. His ambitions grew larger, moving beyond simple plunder to daring challenges against the great powers of the age. The sagas tell of his most audacious raid, aimed at the heart of West Francia, the city of Paris. Picture the River Seine in the year 845. A fleet of over 100 longships appears, a forest of masts moving toward the city. The sight alone was terrifying. This wasn't just a band of pirates, this was an army, disciplined and determined. The Franks, led by their king Charles the Bald, tried to fight back, but were outmaneuvered. Soon, Ragnar's fleet was anchored before the walls of Paris. The city panicked. To avoid the complete destruction of his capital, King Charles offered Ragnar a massive tribute of silver and gold to leave in peace. This payment, known as the Danegeld, was a strategy that would be used again and again. For Ragnar, it was the ultimate triumph. He had held one of Europe's most powerful kingdoms to ransom. He had proved that nothing was beyond the reach of his longships. But Ragnar's legacy wasn't only forged in raids, it was also being built at home, in the sons he fathered. These were men who would inherit his ambition, and in time, carve their own paths into history. The sagas tell us of many sons, but 4 in particular stand out. There was Bjorn, called Ironside. He was a warrior in the classic sense, strong, fearless, and with a thirst for adventure that mirrored his father's. He was a born explorer, always wondering what lay beyond the horizon. Then there was Ivar, known as the Boneless. Ivar is one of the most fascinating figures in the sagas. The name Boneless is a mystery. Some tales say he had a physical disability that weakened his legs, and he had to be carried into battle on a shield. Others think the name was a metaphor for his serpent-like cunning in battle. What is never questioned, however, was his mind. Ivar was a terrifyingly sharp and brilliant strategist. While his brothers saw the battlefield, Ivar saw the entire war. Alongside them were Hvitserk and Sigurd Snake in the Eye, each a formidable warrior, all bound by blood and the immense shadow of their father. Growing up as the sons of Ragnar Lothbrok, they were trained in the arts of war from the moment they could hold an axe, knowing that one day, they would be expected to live up to their father's legend. As they grew, they looked towards their own destinies. It was Bjorn Ironside who conceived of an expedition more audacious than any before. He wouldn't just raid the familiar coasts of England and France. He would sail south, into the legendary waters of the Mediterranean. Imagine that journey. A fleet setting sail from their northern home, voyaging into the unknown. The air grows warmer, the sun stronger. The sea changes from the cold grey of the north, to the brilliant blue of the south. They raided down the coast of Francia, navigated the treacherous Strait of Gibraltar, and entered the Sea of Old Empires. They attacked the coasts of Muslim-ruled Spain, and the Balearic Islands, a force unlike any seen in these waters before. One of the most famous tales from this epic journey, though it may be more legend than fact, tells of how they captured the Italian city of Luna, which they mistook for Rome. The story goes that the city's walls were too strong to attack directly, so they resorted to a trick worthy of Ragnar himself. Bjorn pretended to be deathly ill, and his men claimed his dying wish was to receive a Christian burial inside the city's church. The clergy agreed. A small party of Vikings carried their supposedly dead leader in a coffin through the gates. But once inside, Bjorn sprang from the coffin, fully armed. He and his men cut down the surprised guards, threw open the city gates, and let the Viking army pour in. Whether that story is true or not, it captures the essence of their campaign, a mix of brutal force and clever strategy. Bjorn and his fleet spent years in the Mediterranean, returning to Scandinavia with incredible wealth and even more incredible stories. He was no longer just the son of Ragnar Lothbrok, he was a legend in his own right. Let your mind rest here for a moment. Feel the warmth of the southern sun, see the brilliant blue of the water, and hear the distant echo of these incredible tales. Let the gentle waves of this legendary sea carry you further down, into a calm and quiet sleep. While his sons were becoming legends, Ragnar Lothbrok was growing older. In the Viking world, a peaceful death was not something a great warrior wanted. The goal was to die in battle, to be chosen by the Valkyries, and carried to Valhalla. Ragnar felt he needed one last great adventure to seal his legacy. He grew obsessed with proving that he, alone, could still achieve greatness. Some sagas say he was even envious of his son's growing fame. He declared that he would raid England one last time, but with only 2 ships. It was a boast born of pride. His wife, Aslaug, who was said to have the gift of foresight, warned him against it. She told him his ships weren't strong enough for the North Sea, and his small force would be no match for the English kingdoms. But Ragnar, in his pride, wouldn't listen. He set sail for the kingdom of Northumbria. Just as Aslaug had predicted, a terrible storm came down upon his small fleet. The waves crashed over his ships and the timbers splintered. Both longships were swallowed by the sea. Ragnar survived, washing ashore on the hostile coast of England with just a few of his men. He was a shipwrecked warrior, stranded in enemy territory. The king of Northumbria at the time was a man named Aella. When news reached him that the great Ragnar Lothbrok had been cast upon his shores, he saw his chance to destroy a legend and secure his own reign. King Aella's forces quickly found and surrounded Ragnar's small band. They fought with the ferocity of cornered wolves, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. Ragnar was captured. Determined to make an example of him, Aella denied Ragnar a warrior's end. Instead, he ordered a deep pit to be filled with venomous snakes. This was to be Ragnar's doom. He was cast down among the serpents. It's in this final terrible moment that Ragnar's legend is truly forged. According to the sagas, as the snakes struck at him, he did not cry out or beg for mercy. He remained defiant to the end. His voice rang out with a final chilling prophecy. He spoke of his sons, his little pigs. He proclaimed, "How the little pigs would grunt if they knew how the old boar suffers." It wasn't a cry of pain, it was a threat, a promise of vengeance. He knew the news of his death would reach his sons, and their grief would turn to unstoppable rage. His death wasn't an end, it was the spark that would ignite a firestorm across England. As he took his last breath, Ragnar Lothbrok smiled, knowing his path to Valhalla was secure, and the saga of his sons was about to begin. King Aella thought he had destroyed his greatest enemy, but in truth, he had unleashed a force of retribution that England had never seen. Rest now in the quiet after this epic fall. Picture the silence of the Northumbrian court, the false sense of victory. Feel the deep, calm certainty of fate turning. Let this stillness guide you deeper into sleep, into the quiet darkness, where all stories come to rest. The news of Ragnar's death traveled across the North Sea. When it finally reached his sons, their grief quickly hardened into something far more dangerous. A cold, unified purpose. The final words of the old boar were a call to action, and the little pigs would now answer. This was no longer about silver or fame. This was about honor, family, and vengeance. Ivar the Boneless, the master strategist, took charge. He knew that avenging a man like Ragnar required more than another raid. It required an army unlike any that had ever been assembled. The call went out across Scandinavia. From Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, warriors began to gather. This wasn't a random group of raiders, it was a meticulously planned invasion force. The Anglo-Saxon chronicles would later give it a name that spoke of its terrifying impact: the Great Heathen Army. In the year 865, this immense force set sail for England. It was a fleet so large, it was said to have darkened the sea with its hulls. Thousands of warriors, drawn together by Ragnar's legend and the leadership of his sons, crossed the water. Ivar was the mastermind, but his brothers were with him: Bjorn Ironside, the seasoned adventurer, Kvitserk, and Ubba, another formidable son. They landed not in Northumbria, but in East Anglia, a classic move by Ivar. Instead of a direct assault, he secured a foothold. The East Anglian king, terrified by the army's size, quickly made peace, providing the Vikings with horses and supplies. The Great Heathen Army now had a base, and, more importantly, mobility. They spent the winter there, preparing. The following year, 866, the army marched north into Northumbria. King Alla was now faced with the storm his actions had unleashed. He and a rival king, Osbert, set aside their differences to face the common enemy. They marched on the city of York, which the Vikings had already captured, and renamed Jorvik. The battle for York was fierce, but the Northumbrians were no match for the Vikings. The historical records simply state that in the chaos, both King Osbert and King Ælla were slain. The Northumbrian army was crushed, and their kingdom fell under Viking control. But the sagas, those tales of bloody vengeance, tell a different, more gruesome story of Ælla's fate. They claim he was captured alive. Ragnar's sons, according to the legend, subjected him to a ritual execution so horrific it has become a dark legend of its own. The Blood Eagle. Whether this ritual ever truly happened, or was an invention of storytellers, is debated by historians. But the tale itself is a chilling testament to the reputation of Ragnar's sons. The legend says they carved an eagle into Ælla's back, broke his ribs from his spine to form bloody wings, and pulled his lungs out through the wounds. It was a death of unimaginable agony, and the ultimate settlement of a blood debt. With their father avenged, the great heathen army didn't stop. For over a decade they rampaged across England, conquering East Anglia and the powerful kingdom of Mercia, until only one Anglo-Saxon kingdom remained standing, Wessex, ruled by a young king named Alfred. The invasion led by Ragnar's sons forever reshaped the map of England, leading to the creation of the Danelaw, a vast territory ruled by Viking laws. The vengeance of Ivar, Bjorn and their brothers had been absolute. They hadn't just sought revenge, they had shattered a nation and built a new one from its pieces. The legacy of Ragnar Lothbrok was now immortal, written not just in sagas but in the very soil of England. And here, the echoes of battle finally fade, and the fires of vengeance burn down to embers. The legend of Ragnar and his sons is complete, a timeless story of ambition, destiny, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Their names are etched into history, their deeds remembered in tales that have survived 1,000 years. The world of the Vikings, with all its fierceness and glory, now recedes back into the mists of time. The journey is over. The roaring fires of the Longhouse have dwindled to glowing coals, and a deep, peaceful quiet settles over the land. The warriors are at rest, their stories told. It is time now for your own deep rest. There are no more shores to conquer, no more battles to fight. There is only the calm, steady rhythm of your own breathing, and the comfortable weight of your blankets. Let the last pieces of the story drift away, leaving behind only a profound sense of peace. The crackling fire, the distant waves, the whispering wind. Let these sounds be your final companions as you sink completely into a deep and healing sleep. The heroes have found their place in Valhalla, and you have found your sanctuary in the quiet of this night. Sleep well. Sweet dreams.